Hello. Thank you for listening. This is the Friendly Reminder Podcast. It's your weekly friendly reminder of what's going on in our lives, around the world, and everything in between. My name is Gus, and once again, I'm going to be your host for the evening. Today is July the 30th, as of the day of this recording. And as always, I do have my two dearest friends joining me today. Daniel, how are you today?
Good, Gus. A lot of shit happened this week. A lot of shit. This was a long ass week. Today was a long ass week.
Today was a long ass. Yeah, today alone is like a long ass, I don't know, decade.
Oh, so much shit. We'll talk about a fraction of it. I'm sure we'll miss world-changing stories, but anyway.
Yeah, we're gonna try to cover as much as we can, but it's a busy schedule that we have today. And joining us for it is Sam. Sam, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good today.
You sound
How
very
are
excited
you?
as always. I'm good. Thank you so much for asking. And as we mentioned, we do have as always, I keep saying this every week, we have a lot to cover, but it's always true, and especially today. We're going to get started with the news pretty much of today, to be honest with you. Before that, though, we do want to just briefly mention that today, John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, civil rights activist, was eulogized, memorialized, laid to rest in Atlanta during his funeral. Three presidents, former presidents, were in attendance: former President Barack Obama, former President George W. Bush, and former President Bill Clinton were in attendance to give their remarks and pay their respects. Current President Donald Trump was not in attendance, so make out of that what you will. But we just briefly want to say thank you to Mr. Lewis. Thank you for your persistent hard work throughout the decades. Thank you for the fights that you picked. And thank you for your sacrifice. So for Congressman John Lewis, may you rest in power. But moving to the big news of the day, what I think is the biggest news of the day, we'll see if it's covered as prominently as the other news stories that we're going to talk about today. But this morning, the second quarter GDP results came out, and it shrank. Our GDP shrank at an annual rate of 32.9%, so almost 33%. That is that's the second quarter. That is for April, May, and June. So April, pretty much when we were fully closed. May, we started opening up a little bit. In June, we saw a little bit more activity. But these numbers cannot be described as anything other than staggering. Just to give some context, this is the worst drop that we've had on record. The previous holder to that, and this is all post-war, so it does not count the Great Depression, but the previous holder was in 1958. It dropped 10%. And again, this quarter, it dropped 32.9%. Now, I'm not an economist.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, it's interesting. The headlines I saw about this were so post-Trump. They talked about, it's going to be a drawn-out recovery. And I'm like, the economy is literally in free fall. And these headline writers, in an attempt to be fair to this idiot who's driving us straight into the pandemic, are talking about a drawn-out recovery. It's absolutely, it's amazing. The way that they sort of soften the blow of this stuff because they don't want to be seen as overly aggressive towards Donald Trump and conservatives. They go out of their way to be fair to conservatives.
Yeah, and this is all happening with the backdrop that Congress has not acted on the economy in a significant manner in 3 months, I want to say. I misremember when the CARES Act passed, but it's been a couple of months at least. They're still struggling to come to some sort of decision, some kind of agreement with the current, is it the fourth package or the fifth package, coronavirus package that they're trying to pass? They haven't come to, they haven't come to an agreement. That's still on hold right now. And the unemployment benefits that were passed in the first CARES Act expire, I believe, either today or tomorrow. So that's a thing. The people are about to lose a lifeline. There's a staggering number of evictions that could possibly happen in the next coming months or
Yeah,
so.
Gus, I actually was interested that you picked although obviously that's a huge story, the massive shrinking of the economy by 30%. But yeah, I was going to say the background is there's a massive unemployment crisis. Not only massive unemployment crisis, there's another crisis of the shitty American unemployment system being completely overburdened and people not being able to actually get their unemployment. There's the massive GDP plunge you mentioned, the massive eviction crisis, because instead of having some sort of rent cancellation, did we have a federal rent pause? I don't even remember if we had that, but of course,
I don't
3
believe we
months
did.
later, people who lost their job, how are they going to come up with 3 times the amount of rent that they had? It's of course, we have 150,000 plus dead. Republicans still saying that masks aren't necessary, still downplaying the coronavirus. Herman Caden died, and his Twitter feed was littered with downplaying and talking about how masks are dumb and how cool it is to go out without masks on, and he died. So
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more
yeah,
about that. And
yeah.
yeah, you're right,
That
because
doesn't even touch on the insane, crazy semen doctor that Trump has been touting. Who, again, this doctor that said that masks don't work, and has all these other crazy beliefs like demons and witches come to you in your dreams and impregnate you. Donald Trump Jr. got banned temporarily from Twitter, and conservatives thought it was the biggest civil rights issue of our time. They were like, rest in peace, John Lewis, and also rest in peace, Donald Trump Jr.'s Twitter account for being temporarily banned for
yeah,
tweeting this crazy Dear Means Sperm video.
equal
But
things,
hey,
both sides.
yeah,
And yeah, and it's important that you mentioned that, because in this report there's some what seems to be some good news, that maybe there was more activity in May and June, but it does not take into account the sharp increases in cases in states like Texas, California, Arizona, Florida, that really started skyrocketing in July, led to some pausing of the reopening, as well as rolling back, in fact, some of those reopening measures. So I mean, that this is shooting ourselves in the foot, because we didn't want to listen to the guidelines when we had the time. So now we have this massive drop in the second quarter, and it would be foolish to think this is going to massively improve on a dime.
and then Bill Barr went in front of Congress and said it was Obama's fault.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. That happened. That's a real thing that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, also something we're going to get to. So, this is very upsetting news to wake up to early in the morning. A lot of people right now, we don't know where our employment is going to be a year from now. We're lucky for some of us, we're lucky to have it now. We don't know where it's going to be even a couple of months down the line. So I'm hoping for some kind of good news soon, but it's not going to come unless we actually make significant changes to make it happen. But yeah, that's one of the bad news that we woke up to this morning. And it it seems that our president did not think we were anxious enough already. He did not think that the American people were anxious enough,
I
because
forgot.
literally, like, I think
Said he was
less
going
than
to
an hour.
cancel the election. I
Yeah,
forgot that happened. So much
less
stuff.
than an hour that where after this news came out, he tweeted that he openly mused that we should be delaying the election, and in fact citing safety reasons to be able to do it, as well as mailing voting. I'm saying that this, already claiming before there's any kind of evidence, before there's a single vote casted, that this is going to be the most corrupt the most corrupt election in history, and the most fraudulent election in history. We talked about this on our first episode. Our anxiety, we shared our anxieties regarding election day and how that's going to turn out, and we mentioned, not only voter suppression, but questioning the results and delaying the result process if Donald Trump were to lose, perhaps taking it to court. And if we had any doubts, or at least if I had any doubts that was ever going to happen, if the results are not favorable for Donald Trump, I don't have a single one now. He's saying it. He's planting that flag right now.
Barr said something about that too, which we'll get to, which was
I
amazing.
mean, Trump even said that in 2016. Like, if he lost, it would be a fraudulent election. You know?
Yeah, he did say that.
Well, he says 2016 was a fraudulent election because he didn't win the popular vote. He would have if millions of illegal people hadn't been shipped to California to run up the total or some such nonsense.
He literally mentioned that Hillary Clinton got millions of fraudulent votes, and she lost that election. So, yeah, if Joe Biden wins, the best case scenario is that he won, but it's going to be disputed for quite a while, I believe, and it's going to be a very anxious time.
Unless it's like a landslide, you know.
Maybe. Like that's what I'm hoping, because I think if it's a landslide, maybe
Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million, and Trump still denies it. Like you're underestimating their ability to utterly deny reality.
Yeah.
As they're sick, dying in a hospital, tweeting about how this disease is not a big deal and how they love licking each other's faces and stuff to own the lips.
How they say children will be, responsible when going back to school.
Oh yeah,
I mean that's one thing. Like he's saying that we should reopen schools, and it's perfectly okay for children and teachers and faculty to go back, but somehow it's too unsafe for us to cast our votes. So there's hypocrisy there, obvious hypocrisy. It should be noted that the president does not have the power to delay the election. That is determined by Congress. But I don't want to just say that and then shrug this whole thing under the rug, because this is the president of the United States just openly saying, like, hey, maybe we should just delay the election. We're here. Like, this is a scary time. And
can you imagine if Obama had mused about something like that? I think that there would have been a violent coup had he had even hinted at something like that, even jokingly. The militias would be marching through the streets.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the people would have already died because of that, of this, if it had been Obama that had said it. And somehow when Donald Trump says it, there's a lot of blue check marks on Twitter just jumping in and, well, really, the president doesn't have the authority to do it. Yes, he doesn't. It's the fact that the president is even saying this, that we should have this conversation, and we should be very afraid of what can happen come election day, because he has a lot of ways he can persuade a large number of people to believe that any result that's not favorable to him is fraudulent, and that should worry people. But we do have to move on to the next piece of news that did happen today. And speaking of denial, today Herman Cain lost his life due to the coronavirus.
Speaking of civil rights heroes that have lost their lives recently, we have the CEO of Godfather Pizza and original anti-masker, Herman Cain, who lost his life mysteriously. They're not actually sure how he lost his life. I think there's some rumors in the media about how it was COVID, but we all know that's a lot of bunkum.
Yeah, that's the lamestream media.
Lamestream media. The people that run Herman Cain's Twitter account, it's funny that Herman Cain has people that run his Twitter account. Well, we should probably clarify, just in case people don't know who Herman Cain is. Herman Cain is a Republican politician who ran for president in 2016, was it? I actually don't remember.
I believe it was 2012. I believe he actually was up in the polls for a little bit in 2012. Maybe he ran again in 2016, but I think his most famous time was in 2012. And so he is a former Republican presidential candidate.
Yeah.
And for a brief moment he was the front runner. And I don't want to dance on top of the grave of a recently dead man. Obviously, he had a family. I have to show a certain amount of respect. But if there was one point that I want to make about this, is it really exemplifies how easily preventable some of this stuff is. And I'm not saying this entire pandemic was easily preventable. I just mean on an individual basis. What are some easy choices that we can do to not have this happen to us? Herman Cain lost his life because A, he refused to wear a mask and was very vocal about that. But B, he most likely got this virus by attending the Tulsa rally that we've mentioned previously in this podcast. He was pictured in that rally. He got sick
Sitting
about
like
two
3 inches from people, just
without a
laughing,
mask.
no masks, just slobber. You can see the spit flying out of his mouth, just flying, hitting everybody in the face. Well, I don't know.
And he got sick about a week or two after that, which is within that time frame of when the symptoms start showing. So, you know, Herman Cain lost his life so he could go watch Donald Trump talk about how well he walks down a rampway.
Yes, that
That is
classic speech of Donald Trump's that we're going to go back to over and over again because it's just going to be this inflection point in our history.
Yes, that rampway is going to be my special guest that I'm going to introduce every other podcast because it keeps coming back. That sentence, he lost his life so Donald Trump can talk about how well he walks down a rampway, is in no way an exaggeration.
No.
And that in itself is insane to me. And I just want to tell the American people, Trump supporters, you don't have to do this. You don't have to die for this man. You can stay home. You'll be able to cast your vote somehow come election day, but you do not have to risk everything. You don't have to risk family members getting sick, yourself getting sick, your dog getting sick, because apparently the dogs can get the virus too. You don't have to do any of this. Just don't go. Don't do this. But Herman Cain did not listen to that.
Herman Cain died doing what he loved, listening to Donald Trump babble about nonsense. And frankly, the fact that you can't appreciate and honor that, I think you're the callous one. Everybody should just kiss. Just go outside, start kissing. Virus isn't going to hurt you. Just do it. That's it.
Spread your freedom saliva everywhere.
Freedom. It's about freedom. Kissing and freedom.
And again, it's just pure stubbornness. It's a pure blissful decision to not listen to any guidance, not listen to any of the experts. And this happens. We talk about the low attendance of that rally in previous episodes, but there was still 6,000 people that went to that rally. 6,000 people is like what? It's like a small to medium-sized college, university. It's still an insane amount of people that decide to risk it all just so they can listen to a lunatic just go on and on and on about the most superfluous shit. Like it boggles the mind, and people can and have and will lose their lives because of it.
Well, look, we know there's at least one casualty coming out of that rally. So
yeah, that's one more casualty than Antifa.
Yeah.
But those 3-4 stories all happened today. It was a lot to take into. What we were going to make our main topic, and it really is still our main topic, is what happened a couple of days before that. Bill Barr, and I'm going to keep calling him Bob Barr throughout all of this. I just know it, or Babar. But Bill Barr testified in front of Congress. And Daniel, I'm going to let you take the lead when it comes to this. But there's just a few things that I'm going to mention that he did state. For one, for example, he did basically deny that there is any kind of systemic racism in policing in America. He was obviously in support of releasing Roger Stone from prison, and having the president commute his sentence, basically saying the line like, would you be okay with a 67-year-old man do a 7 to 9 year sentence, which is a weird statement to make.
Well, the implication was also he's the president's friend. But even then, it's like, why? Like,
Like you can't just boil it down to that man's age. It's also what he did. But
He's also white. He's white and he's a Republican.
yeah,
You forgot about
I
that. So
forgot that little
yeah, little
issue.
tidbit. Yeah.
He he struggled to even say if it's inappropriate for a president to seek foreign assistance during an election. He said something to the manner, it's like, well, it depends what kind of assistance it is.
Yep.
Eventually he was pressed, and he did say it's not appropriate for a president to seek assistance or take assistance. Those are just a few of the things that you
But
took out of this hearing.
but
But
by calling the Russia investigation bullshit, which he has already done, which again, if this is an investigation that he's supposedly looking into, calling it bullshit is a good way to make sure that no one in their right mind is going to actually investigate foreign interference in the election in this upcoming election. Like your boss is calling it bullshit before you even start dealing with it. So it's kind of hard to start. This Barr testimony was so dishonest, and it's kind of incredible how far we've come, because Barr is the attorney general. We used to have in this country, they weren't always airtight, but we used to have norms against the politicization of the Justice Department and the attorney general. And the attorney general is not supposed to be coordinating directly with the president on political issues, and this is just out the window at this point. It's not even it's I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase Overton window, but the Overton window has been blown apart. Like, this isn't even like 4 years ago we were talking about how inappropriate it was, and everybody agreed it was so inappropriate for Loretta Lynch to meet with Bill Clinton for 20 minutes. Now Barr sits in front of Congress and admits that he talks about the election with Trump, the political implications of everything that he's doing. He's directly intervened in cases to help Trump associates, including Roger Stone, by trying to get him sentenced a lighter sentence. And then, I don't know if he technically participated in the commutation, but I mean, he's had a record of pushing presidents to pardon individuals in order to cover up crimes. I mean, he did it with Roger Stone. He also did it during Iran-Contra with George W. Bush when he was the attorney general at that time. So it's really hard to know what to focus down on. It was just an incredible series of testimony. And what really pissed me off is the media came out of this just unprecedented testimony where Barr said basically that he was willing to use the intrusive and offensive tools of the attorney general's office in order to extend Trump's tenure. And they came out of that saying, well, it was a bunch of partisan bickering, right? Because the media assumes, well, Barr is on Trump's side, right? It's not Barr is the fucking attorney general and he needs to have a sort of distance from politics. No, Barr is just the arm of Trump at this point. He tells the same lies as Trump. He dissembles the same way Trump does. He praises Trump in the same way Trump does. In the same way Trump praises himself. He at this, and this isn't just to say, I'm kind of flinging arrows at this guy, but I mean, he's also commanding a fucking goon squad in the cities of the United States who are acting in a violent manner. And he talked about that too. They talked about, he went on and on about how our cities were being torn apart by anarchists, and it was kind of interesting because he went, oh, there were 20 something injuries of federal agents, and he was like, someone shot a federal, and he started going through the list, and obviously he's going to pick the worst ones because those are the worst injuries that these anarchists are doing. And it was like, a federal agent experienced some minor hearing loss because of a firework that was near them, and another federal agent was shot with a pellet gun. And these were like the major injuries, and I was just thinking to myself, what injuries is he not mentioning? Is it like, one of the feds had a tummy ache, another one missed his nap time, and another one skinned his knee? This is DHS. These are the guys who are supposedly going to be fighting Al Qaeda and MS-13 in the streets, and Barr is like, oh, woe is me, they're getting their toes stubbed by totally unarmed protesters. Meanwhile, they're firing at point blank range, non-lethal rounds into the faces of these protesters, tear gassing them with abandon. That's another thing Barr lied about. He said that there was no tear gas used in the Lafayette Park incident, where the park was completely cleared out of protesters so that Trump could. Well, it was actually kind of weird because Trump basically wanted to do a photo op, so they cleared the park out and caught it on tape where the protesters were tear gassed, and yet Barr gave the order to clear the park, and he still insists that no tear gas was used, even though there's videos of tear gas being used. It's it's sort of hard to sort of go through and list all the terrible, awful shit in this testimony. I don't recommend anybody actually listen to it. It's insufferable. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things, and the way you mentioned it, that there's not a whole lot of difference between him and Trump, and the way what they're actually trying to express is there's really more of a difference of how they're wording things. He made a mention in regards to defending policing and saying that there is not a systemic issue in America regarding policing. He mentioned the fact that, he mentioned, essentially saying more white people get shot than black people, and just
He said
raw
it
figures, and not mentioning any kind of
percent.
disproportional share, or mentioning the fact that obviously white people make up a greater share of the US population, and
Yeah, he
blacks
was like
are
11
disproportionate.
white people have been shot and
Yeah.
8 black people have been shot. So it's like almost 50-50, as
Yeah.
if that he hasn't, as if there's no indication that the fact that black people are like 13% of the population.
Yeah.
So that's
You know what Bill Barr reminds me of? You remember that Key and Peele skit about Obama's translator, where Obama would say some very calm, eloquent thing, and then the translator would just say it in very black, like obvious language. It's like
yeah,
that, but like the opposite.
the
Where
opposite.
Trump
Yeah.
is just like the blowhard, and Bill Barr just politely tries to express what he's trying to say in a more sophisticated manner, but it's really the same thing.
The interesting thing, looking over, I skimmed through the transcript after I listened to it, and I was just like, what are his actual arguments here when he talks about, yeah, no racism and there's no racism. He's like, oh, the death of George Floyd was tragic. And then he talked about Senator Tim Scott, who's the only black Republican senator, and Tim Scott recounted how he'd just been pulled over just repeatedly on Capitol Hill over the years because he's black, and none of the other senators, and he just sort of dismissed it as I can tell you what he said. He said, at the same time, he said, Senator Tim Scott has recounted the numerous times he's been unjustifiably pulled over, and as one prominent black professional in Washington said to me, African Americans often feel treated as suspects first and citizens second. I think these concerns are legitimate, right? Here's his turn. At the same time, I think it would be an oversimplification to treat the problem as rooted in deep-seated racism generally infecting our police departments. It seems far more likely that the problem stems from a complex mix of factors which can be addressed with focused attention over time. That's it. That's He's like, oh, it's a complex, it's complicated. That's it.
That's it. There's
By focused
Moving on.
attention, does he mean brutality and like against protesters? Like,
When he say it one more time.
didn't you say he said focused attention is what will
No.
solve
Well,
it?
no, it's not. He did not mean that. I don't actually know what the hell he meant, to be honest.
Okay.
Like,
I think
like probably telling the cops, you should probably stop pulling over this senator. You should probably learn what he looks like and just stop pulling him over.
yeah.
Like
Okay.
but which obviously doesn't do anything to address the fact that the reason he was being pulled over was that he was black. But Bill Barr doesn't give a shit, so
Yeah.
he moved on from that very quickly. But again, it's sort of hard to focus in on one piece of this garbage testimony because it was all so bad. The media coverage afterwards was like, yeah, it was partisan bickering, ignoring the fact that the attorney general should not be a partisan figure. This is again, it's like when Obama said said sort of offhanded said, "Oh, I don't think they're going to find anything on the email investigation of Hillary Clinton. Republicans lost their mind. They said he was corrupting the process." And literally Trump is having conversations with Bill Barr about every single investigation going on, every political thing. It's not hiding it in any way, shape, or form. During the Ukraine thing where Trump went to Ukraine and said, "You should look into Biden," the Republicans' retort was like, "No, well, you should have gone to your own DOJ and tried to politicize them by having them look into your political," as if that was better somehow. But we've moved so far from any semblance of what it meant to have an actual sort of law enforcement officer separate from just being purely motivated by Trumpian politics, that it's sort of amazing. And it's amazing that Bill Barr has been able to put a respectable face on what amounts to just no. They say law and order, but it's actually the opposite of that. It's lawlessness. It's subsuming law for the rule and interests of a few particular men
Yeah.
who have the power.
Yeah.
It's
It is
hard.
abuse of power.
Yeah, and this isn't even going into the shit about Russia, where he's investigating the investigators and trying to cast doubt on the fact that the very blatant stuff that happened in 2016, where Trump officials were meeting with Russian intelligence agents, and that he basically says, "Well, no, that was a bunch of bullshit, and I'm investigating the investigators." Of course, Mueller's. We criticize Mueller a little bit, but there were 40 indictments. Like the idea that there was no there is absurd. He put out a massive report that pretty clearly laid out that even if it wasn't criminal, there was coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia, and more than that, there was obvious criminal obstruction of justice by Trump and his associates.
Yeah.
It boggles my mind that now we have the quote unquote the serious attorney general being, "Yeah, that's a bunch of bullshit, and I'm going to find out what really happened." And fine, go ahead, charge all you want, do it. I would be very interested in them actually charging people, because I don't think any crimes were actually committed in the Russia investigation. I mean, it's just a bunch of gaslighting. It's muddying the waters, basically.
Yeah. And like one of the reasons I particularly wasn't looking forward to this hearing is because of how I feared the media was going to try to scrutinize it. I still have very negative flashbacks when it comes to the Mueller hearings and the focus on the tone or how Mueller sounded, and the fact that there were no fireworks or there was no explosive moments for the Democrats to hang on to, and I just didn't have any kind of faith that
They
what
did that here too. They were like,
yeah,
"Oh, the Democrats didn't get him," and it was basically Barr confessing to crimes for 4 hours. So I don't really know what they were looking for. If this were any type of fair situation, Barr would have been impeached a long time ago.
yeah.
This would be a massive scandal.
and he also Bill Barr, he did mention that he does have concerns about voting by mail as well, and perhaps foreign interference regarding that. He was questioned if the results were clear, if he were to step down, and he did basically say, he's like, if the results are clear, I will step down, which again doesn't give me any kind of faith that he is going to all of a sudden wake up come election time if Donald Trump were to lose badly and not be an ally for the president. I think he would very much be a tool for the president to use under what the president will probably consider to be the worst case scenario, which is if he were to lose decisively in November.
Bill Barr also called John Lewis a champion of the rule of law. Obviously, this is like the Republican talking point now, which is hilarious because John Lewis was arrested like 40 times
Yeah.
and had the shit kicked out of him by police. And the Republicans are like, "Yeah, MLK, John Lewis, they loved police and the rule of law. Yeah, that was all it was all about for them."
Yeah. And we mentioned about how there's been a lot of revisionist history to in the
Yeah, like
past to try to put this very complex, very complicated country in a very like neat narrative where the people you like were very lawful, awesome, freedom loving Americans, just
yeah,
like
I
how
mean
he wrote.
MLK was really just Black Ronald Reagan, honestly.
Yeah,
And that's the way you need to learn it. Yeah.
yeah,
He was like a slightly less racist Black Ronald Reagan in these people's mind.
yeah. Well, yeah. I
I,
mean,
I
any
feel like
final
there's
thoughts?
so much more about Barr that I want to go over because it was just so. I mean, it's sort of in again any fair system we would be outraged and we would be talking at the very least talking about how he needed to recuse himself from all this, recuse himself from the election stuff, everything like that. Especially because he, wrote an editorial before he was made the attorney general talking about how the Russia case was bullshit, and then was specifically picked because of that editorial. Of course, again, he's not recusing himself from any of this stuff. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares anymore, I guess.
So I
We
do want to ask you though, in that context, like, because is this just the way it is, where if it's a Republican administration, where we're not going to see this outrage, or is it are we past the Rubicon where this kind of abuse of the Department of Justice, which I'm certain it's not the first time that it's happened, but it
not
seems to
at
be more
all.
blatant than ever before. Do you think if Biden were to win, do we all of a sudden revert back to the Obama days where we're far more conscious of any possible politicization of the Department of Justice, or are we just way past it now?
Or do we go back to like the LBJ days where there was more intervention? Yeah, that it's a good question. It's the kind of thing that ebbs and flows. My guess is that we're this sort of the period that kind of lasted from Watergate through Obama, where it was sort of the norm sort of developed, especially after Watergate. That I think is coming to an end with Trump, and I think even with Biden, I think the norms are going to be eroded. I don't think it's going to be as explicit, and I don't think it's going to be as, I guess, bad, but I think it is going to happen because I think the norms have been eroded, and there's no reason. I mean, if honestly, if you were Biden, why wouldn't you
Yeah.
take advantage of the fact that the norms are eroded and you can sort of open the political lines with your attorney general and ask your DOJ to assist you in an election by maybe investigate some of those Republicans. What's good
Yeah.
for the
And again,
goose is good for the gander. And this is the shit Trump like tweets this shit out. He's been saying it out in public. So it's not like, I mean, Republicans are going to clutch their pearls if they ever find out that President Biden asked AG, I don't know, let's go with Elizabeth Warren to look into, all the random hookers that Donald Trump Jr. has been killing and hiding.
and you know
That
where
was parody. That's not really happening as far as I know.
Yeah, and we're discussing this also under the best case scenario, or where we imagine the best case scenario to be at this point, which is a Biden victory. If it's a Donald Trump victory and he's serving a second term, I'm reminded of I believe it was a 60 Minutes interview with Bill Barr, and they asked him, "Do you think history will be kind to you?" And he essentially said, "Well, history is written by the winners. So it really depends who wins." And he smiled. He
Yeah.
smiled like this very devilish smile. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely certain where we're going to go from here. But any other final thoughts regarding the hearing, Daniel, that you'd like to share?
No, nothing that I can think of at the moment. I'll interrupt you if I think of anything and go on another rant.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we're probably not going to stay on our next topic for too long. It's really more of a preview of things to come, but we do just want to touch upon it real quick because we spend a lot of time, rightfully so, but we spend a lot of time talking about Donald Trump and the Trump administration. But To quote Star Wars, there is another, and that man is Joe Biden. He's been running what seems to be a successful campaign so far. If you were to look at the polls, he's been running it mainly underground. Obviously, he's a 76.
It's a real exclusive situation.
Yeah. He's an old man, and he's protecting himself with everything going on. But he's about to make a big choice in what looks to be sometime next week, in which he's going to pick his running mate. Now, there's a lot of debate as to whether a vice presidential pick matters in terms of whether it helps the candidate's election chances or not. Some might say, 2008 Sarah Palin is probably a very good example of when it might matter, but not necessarily for the best ways. Even though she did boost the ticket for a short while, it turns out that in the long run, I guess back in 2008, it really mattered when you didn't know what the hell you were talking about and you weren't able to answer any question in a very coherent way.
I feel like it kind of always matters in a downward way. Like you can't.
Yeah.
It's not going to help you, but it can kind of fuck you if they become the story.
Yeah, that seems to be the main thing. Like you're probably not going to win an election due to your running mate, but it may help you lose it. In 2016, the Tim Kaine pick is resoundingly seen as like a big miss, especially with a fragmented party after a pretty contentious primary between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. There was an opportunity there to kind of heal the divide, and Hillary Clinton very clearly did not want anything to do with that. And the Tim Kaine pick reflected that, and there were consequences.
It's interesting. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but you say it was a miss. I don't know. Was it a miss? I mean, do we know it was a miss for sure? Because we kind of elected a version of Tim Kaine as the nominee this time. So I don't know. I mean, was it a miss?
It's impossible. Yeah, I mean, you have a good point. I mean, it may be impossible to ever know because a good chunk of the moderate wing, a good chunk of the Democratic Party does remain in the moderate lane. So
he certainly didn't excite us. Tim Kaine did not excite us.
Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe Hillary Clinton would have done a better job just picking more of a populist rather than just somebody that she was going to get along with. I don't want to get too into it because what we're trying to preview here is Joe Biden's choice. And he's already said that he is going to pick a woman as his vice presidential running mate. There's a lot of speculation of who it might be. There's quite a big list. I mean, they call it a short list, but it doesn't seem to be that short in my eyes. You see options like Kamala Harris, obviously, Gretchen Whitmer, who's the governor of Michigan, Elizabeth Warren. We have more recently, perhaps that he is going to pick a woman of color. So Stacey Abrams, Keisha Lance Bottoms, who's the mayor of Atlanta, Susan Rice right now seems to be a favorite. She was a former national security advisor. I'm looking at this list. I'm looking at a BBC list right now so our listeners can know. And Michelle Obama is on this list, who I would think would be spectacular, but I don't think that would ever happen. But
I mean, it would be. I think he would almost certainly win if he picked Michelle Obama. But yeah, I don't think it's going to happen.
But would she accept it? Is the question.
I don't think she would.
Well,
My impression is that she did not love politics, being the first lady. And I don't think she would love being president, but
yeah, she has a podcast now, and as we all know, when you start a podcast, it's a full-time job.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys have any expectations. Just out of transparency, I was a big fan of
Susan Rice. Oh, go ahead. Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
mean, I was a big fan of Elizabeth Warren's candidacy. I mean, I know her campaign did not do very well, but she would definitely excite me, and I would be very happy to see her as a running mate. But I do see the point that she probably doesn't really help Joe Biden's chances in really many ways. Right now, it looks like Joe Biden's doing pretty well with getting back some white voters that Hillary Clinton lost to Trump, but
Hmm.
still has some weaknesses with Hispanics, even trailing Hillary Clinton when it comes to the black vote, which Warren did not do very well at all in any of those demographics. So I'm not certain she would be a great pick in terms of sealing any kind of victory. I would just be excited to see her as a vice presidential nominee and perhaps future president, to be honest with you.
So I got a question real quick. When you say that Biden trails the black vote or the African American vote with than Hillary Clinton had more of an African American base than Joe Biden did. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that
So
she well, and keep in mind, I'm obviously going by polls. There's nothing that we're not going to know until there are actually
Yeah, you
votes
got to
cast.
take all this with a little bit of a grain of
Yeah,
salt because we're kind of
yeah,
inferring.
I mean, I don't know. I think, I mean, if they, I think, I don't know. I can't say for certain, but I think it's people, especially in the Black Lives Matter movement, that don't want Trump around, and there's only one other choice, you know?
yeah. Well, I mean, keep in mind that Joe Biden also has his questionable history when it comes to
Yes,
race and when it
exactly.
comes to you
Even
know,
sexism a little bit.
yeah, and
I don't know
he's
what you're talking about. Joe Biden didn't have a career before he was Obama's vice president. I don't know if you guys knew that, but
yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, the second thing I wanted to bring up is when Obama picked Biden. Were we excited about Biden? I mean,
no,
No, but we were excited
absolutely
about
not.
Obama.
Yeah,
yeah,
for
So
sure. We were very excited
that's
about
I
him.
don't think he really needed some like excitement. It's the opposite. He probably needed somebody that can calm people that at that point were thinking that he was too inexperienced, which is what he did. That's exactly what the Joe Biden pick was. And now it's kind of the opposite. I think obviously Joe Biden has the experience, but
he needs the excitement.
Honestly,
perhaps
looking over this list, I think Warren. I like
I
Kamala
think,
Harris. I don't think she would be a bad choice. I don't know if she helps him. I don't think California. I don't think Biden's going to lose California.
yeah.
But man, honestly, looking at this list, I'm thinking Michelle Obama should. This should, yeah,
Yeah,
because
that's really the
Susan
only
Rice
one.
seems like a. I mean, isn't he just opening himself up for Benghazi, 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 Benghazi?
yeah.
Yeah, that hot jam.
The other,
Yeah, I think so. I don't.
I mean,
I think Susan. I mean, there's a possibility that Joe Biden's probably just going to pick somebody who he likes. There is a real relationship there, or a real relationship aspect there that maybe he values.
You're saying one of these women will form a relationship with the deep fake that is now running against Trump, the deep fake Joe Biden.
Yes,
Sorry, that was a poor
that's.
joke.
Well, I mean, I look. Usually, the vice presidency does not matter, right? Like we are at least not in a very significant way. Uh, right now, it doesn't matter. I really don't know what Pence does, to be honest. I don't know what he does with his entire day. But in this
he has
case,
his own bunny.
yeah,
That's
true.
important.
But in this case, it is
Pence is
important
Q.
to.
I think we all know that.
Oh, dang! I never thought about that.
Yeah, that's what he
But I
does all
think
day. Posts on 4chan.
in this case, there is something of that we should pay attention to because there's a good chance whoever he does pick, Joe Biden may be a one-term president. I'm not sure if he's 100% made that declaration or made that promise, but considering his age, he could very well be a one-term president. And whoever he selects, it may be the standard bearer come 2024, for better or for worse. Curious to see if there's going to be any kind of challenge.
I
Let me
think
get a hold of
any
myself.
of these people would be a good
If Joe
choice.
Biden wins, I'm not sure if in 2024, there would be any kind of primary challenge for against whoever he picks. But it's important to keep in mind that this is a little different than most picks in the sense that it's the future of the Democratic Party.
It's kind of
I
funny that
think
we're. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think of all the available choices that he has, I honestly think that, I mean, Elizabeth Warren, I would love to have her on the ticket, but I think moderators or moderators,
Yeah,
moderates
you
would
should
not
select the
like her.
debate moderators so he can get a leg up in the debates.
I
Sorry.
don't think the moderates would like her
Expensive
because
strategy.
the Republicans would just start going off on how she's similar to Bernie.
Yeah, that's true.
And
They are still trying
Well,
to
they're doing
tie
that right
Biden to
now.
Bernie. They're like,
Yeah,
Joe Biden is Bernie Sanders with the Joe Biden mask. It's actually kind
yeah.
of really funny.
I think even
yeah,
Donald Trump said like, "Oh, now he's going even left to than he's going left to Bernie Sanders," and I was like, "Really? That's awesome."
Yeah, I was like, cool. But look, in terms of experience, I think every person on here would be a totally competent VP and a totally
Yeah,
competent P president. um, it's one of those things where like our current president can barely keep his pants up, so it's sort of like, look, I'm looking at these. All of these women can do a much better job than the president. Do I have a favorite? I think I like Stacey Abrams quite a bit. I like Susan Rice, but Benghazi,
yeah,
yeah, that'll definitely come up.
Benghazi.
yeah,
I bet they'd even get a debate question on it because that's just the world we live in, and it would be it's fairness to ask him about this bullshit. I like Kamala Harris, but again, I don't think it gets him anything. Honestly, it's a hard choice for Biden. Not because not because he doesn't have good choices. It's almost just because, well, VP is just hard because it sort of like doesn't get you anything, but it could hurt you down the line. But I
yeah.
don't
And
know,
this one
man.
could really hurt him. Like, I mean, he's leading a lot in the polls right now, but if he chose, I mean, each of these people, however amazing they are,
So most of these people are moderates. The furthest left person on here is Elizabeth Warren. And I would
Yeah.
say
yeah,
the rest of them are moderates. I
I
know
don't
that
think.
Kamala gets painted as left wing because she's from California, but I would call her pretty moderate. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't think, and I'm viewing this as my prediction of how the American electorate would view it. I don't think there's a single candidate here that's would be a huge burden for Joe Biden. I would say if I had to pick one, it would probably be Susan Rice because I do think the Benghazi topic would come up often. Republicans would definitely want to have that discussion again compared to everything else going on. But there doesn't seem to be somebody here who I would be too
You know,
against. But at the
they
same time,
also
I don't think
tagged her
they're.
with that unmasking nonsense, so I'm sure you wouldn't hear the end
Yeah.
of that.
But I also don't think there's anybody here. Again, not me personally, but I don't think there's anybody here that would really boost Joe Biden's chances more than higher than they are now. I think
yeah,
really Joe Biden's probably looking at this and be like, who can kind of just make sure I'm going to stay where I am right now, which is 8 to 10 points above in the polls.
yeah.
Guys,
That's
I
what I'm
think we
thinking.
should be putting in some very sincere calls to Michelle Obama because I feel like that's the
Yeah,
ticket
she's the only
here.
one. She's really the only one that I would be
Yeah, and
like,
it's just
wow.
it is so like unlikely to happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
The
Well,
Obamas seem very done with politics, and justifiably so.
I don't blame them, and I
No,
don't,
I do
especially
not blame
considering
them.
their family and what they've had to go through. And again, that podcasting is a lot of hard work. I
It
have not listened to
it's
it.
honestly
I'm
the
looking
most
forward.
important thing you can do right now is start a podcast
Yeah,
more than
get
any
our
of this other
voices
stuff.
heard. Well, anyways, it looks like the pick will come next week. Um, hopefully, early next week. We'll probably touch base on that and see what we feel about the pick in next week's episode. If it is indeed if Joe Biden indeed makes the selection at that time. But beyond that, we'll come back to it next week. I do want to move on to our next topic. And in this case, I'm going to refer to my good friend Sam here because the folks listening, every journey must come to an end. And as you all listening know, Sam has been following an anime. Welcome to NHK. He's been sharing his thoughts here a couple of times, and he has finished his journey with the anime, and he wants to share his thoughts. Sam, I want to give you a little bit more time than I have previously, since you did finish it. You seem very, very excited about what you want to share. So tell us, what did you feel about the ending? What did you feel about the anime as a whole?
The first thing that comes to mind is the the creator of this anime had to have had some type of had to have been diagnosed with some type of mental health. I don't want to say problem, but some type of mental health, like depression or anxiety or something,
Hmm.
because of how this anime is, how the story progressed. It's hard for people who don't have depression or people who don't have anxiety to portray what depression is like. In fact, I've been looking for a good quote that I thought I wanted to end with it, but I think I'm going to start with it. And this is from the creator himself. He says, "I've read over 200 self-improvement books. I know what to do to change my life around, but I have the fear of that change. What will happen then? I have the fear that something unexpected may occur." And I think that pretty much sums up people who have general anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder, and even people with bipolar. I mean, I feel like that sometimes where, I mean, I can learn all this thing, but what will happen if I do successfully change, you know? The other thing that I wanted to say, and I've I just want to let you know, whoever out there that has a mental health problem or been diagnosed with mental health issue, that you're not alone. And as far as for an anime showing basically overall a real life scenario, you know, I mean, it's coming to the attention of more and more people, I think. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
The Are you gonna say something, Gus?
No, no, go on. I'm sorry.
That's okay. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was before I was watching this, I was just looking for an anime that was underrated. And what I found and watched from this anime became my all-time favorite anime. It used to be Neon Genesis Evangelion, but now it's this, and it's not because of the animation. I mean, the animation's okay. It could do a little bit of work, but the characters and the story, what made me fall in love with this anime. Sato, who the main character is, Misaki, who is this woman who is trying to help Sato get out of his, once again, where is that word? It's hikomari, which basically is like, you're isolated all the time. You don't clean anything. You can't have social interactions, or
Okay.
it's hard for you to have social interactions. But, and I,
Well, I wanted to ask you, Sam, because I find it very interesting that you mentioned, well, one, obviously, that it's your favorite anime, but you mentioned that it toppled your previously favorite anime, which is Neon Genesis Evangelion, Eva, which is also another anime that very famously tackled mental health issues and depression. Also had a prominent creator that dealt with depression, with personal struggles that helped him create, inspired him to create Ava. Ava tackled it in a very outlandish way, obviously in a very supernatural way. Does this do the same thing, or is it more? Is it a little bit more grounded? What would you say are like the clear differences between this and Ava?
The clear differences is that it's as real life as it could be. Sato suffers from very strange hallucinations. For example, the items in his department talk to him. Now that is maybe not outlandish. I mean, I'm sure some people have had that happen to them, but it felt the way the anime portrayed itself was more like a real life thing, and the way the hallucinations portrayed themselves was more outlandish to me, at least. You know, they talked in funny voices. They tried to convince him to stop going out. They tried to convince him that there's a conspiracy towards him. I'm sorry, Gus. I lost what did you ask me again? I'm sorry.
No, I mean you're answering it. I just in comparison to Evangelion. So it sounds like this is a character dealing with obviously with his mental struggles, and those struggles aren't seem like they're personified through hallucinations. Did I
Yes.
get that? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you. That's a good summarization of it.
which is not Ava, obviously. Well, who knows? There's probably arguments that everything in Ava was all a dream or a
Yeah.
hallucination too. So, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole.
Not
But
tonight,
it sounds like
anyway.
yeah, not tonight. But it sounds like it's approaching it a little bit more of a, would you say, a more relatable way in terms of dealing with your mental
Oh
struggles in
yeah.
Ava?
I mean, I felt for Sato because I've been through what he has been through. I've done things that he's done. In fact, that was the next topic that I wanted to talk about. Salto felt worthless for a lot of the anime, and for most of my adult life, I have felt worthless. You know, he would never clean his apartment. It would just be trash upon trash. The only time that he actually tried to was when his mom came, but it was just the fact that he didn't care. He didn't care about his cleanliness. He didn't care about anything, which when people have depression or, anxiety, they don't care. It's just part of living like that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to say, one of the other characters, Yamazaki, tried to help him. They started. They tried to. They were creating a video game to try and convince Misaki. I don't know how much you guys remember, but Misaki was in his dreams, and she's convinced that he's a NEET, which is once again not an employment, education, or training, and they're trying to convince her that he's not. That Sato isn't. Yeah, I mean he was. I think I already said that.
So this is your favorite anime of all time now?
Yes.
You said that.
Yes.
But how? I'm skeptical.
Well,
Are you saying it's better than Naruto?
Well, I just mean you've seen. Look, if anime were Pokemon, you would have caught them all because
no,
you've
dude. There's
seen them all.
I have not seen them all. I have seen
Okay,
a lot, but I have not seen them all.
You've seen a lot of them, and you love a lot of them.
Yes.
When you started this show, you reviewed it for the podcast. You gave it kind of middling. You were a little bit middling. You said it was kind of rough at the beginning. Now you're like, this is the best show ever.
Yeah.
this is better than Pokemon. This is better than Dragon Ball Z. This is better than everything.
I mean, to me
So
at least.
justify
To me
that.
at least.
But like,
I mean, I think there's an important difference between your personal favorite anime and then making a statement that this is the best anime
I'm not.
ever
Yeah, I'm
created.
not saying this is the best anime ever. I'm just saying this is my favorite anime of all time.
Yeah, which is Naruto, as mentioned, the best anime.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think what you are saying, Sam, and I think you're putting it in a very touching way is that it reminds you of your struggles, but it's also encouraging in a way, and there's a sense of solidarity when you view this anime that others also go through this struggle, and it's a significant struggle. And you mentioned how it stops people from doing what they know will help them, because that's what it is. That's what anxiety is, and that's what depression is. When we use the term crippling anxiety and crippling depression, because it is that. It literally stops you from doing what you know would help you, and then you instead don't do anything, or you indulge in your bad habits, and it's a very hard mountain to climb, and to have something that shows that and personifies that, I think could be very powerful.
Like I said, I've not seen all the anime in the world. There's way too many to count. But
by the end of Friendly Reminder, you will
yeah,
have reviewed it all. Yeah. Okay.
but I've
Thank
seen a lot of anime, and I like a lot of anime, or a lot of the anime episodes. My top 5 were Neon Genesis, Azumanga Daioh, Last Exile, Kenichi, and Toradora. But now it's Welcome to NHK is the number 1. Mostly because
I thought you were going to say it's that like 5 times. It's just the
mostly
list.
because I just a great piece of art, as anyone should know, will affect you in some way. And this anime affected me a lot. Um, I learned from it, and I will probably always struggle with my depression and anxiety for the rest of my life. But I think I've come to the realization that I'm gonna have to just do it.
Take it one day.
Not just
at a
take it
time.
one day, but just
It's
it's
a
not about
constant
being
struggle.
afraid. It's just doing it. Like I just have to be able to do things.
Yeah. I understand what you mean.
The other thing, I don't know how much time we have left. I don't know if you want me to end here.
No, you can finish your thought.
Okay. The other thing was the anime's ending. At first, I didn't like it, but as I thought about it, I started to realize I'm not going to tell you what it is because whoever wants to watch it, I don't want to ruin it for you. But when I got to the end, when I got closer to the end, I had anxiety because of it, because I didn't know if it was going to be a happy anime or a happy ending or a sad ending or something in the middle. I just didn't know. And I was afraid to keep going because if it was sad, then I would probably feel sad. Or if I don't, it's hard to explain. I'm a very empathetic person. So I feel more than probably most people or the average person, but
Sam, can I
yeah,
intervene?
go ahead.
Because I would like to maybe pull some of our topics together with a poem from one of the great poets.
Okay.
I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. To catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause. I will travel across the land, searching far and wide, each Pokemon to understand the power that's inside. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all.
Rest in
And
peace.
that's by civil rights pioneer Herman Cain.
Thank you,
Rest in peace.
Daniel.
Well,
There is one
appreciate-
more thing that I have to say, and I don't recommend you watching this because it has a lot of spoilers unless you actually watch the anime. But I love anime music videos, and I found
I thought you meant this podcast.
yes,
You were like, I don't recommend you listen to the podcast you just heard. Because
there's this great anime music video that depicts this anime. Just go to YouTube and search "Welcome to NHK," AMV, and Secrets. The song by One Republic, and it is a great anime music video. And I search
But
far and
watch the anime
wide.
first.
No, don't watch it first.
No, yeah, watch the anime.
Yeah,
first.
watch the anime first. But yeah, that was it.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that, Sam. Obviously, thank you for sharing your thoughts on the anime. Thank you for sharing some of your struggles, some of your personal history. It's never easy to share when other people are listening. So I want to thank you for that and sharing your experiences. But with that does come to the end of our show. So once again, Daniel, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Gus.
Sam, again, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, love the discussion. And one last thing, I want to thank our viewers for joining us today, and hopefully every other week in the upcoming future. We really appreciate you taking the time. I know we're still a new podcast, but every episode we're trying to learn and we're trying to get better. But knowing that you're listening and you're following us really means the world to us. So once again, our lovely listeners, just wanted to thank you. And that does end our show for today. So we will see you all next week for another round of